Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views of myself, Salailo Makwidi. The time is 9:42 Central African Time. And I have one of my favorite people in studio this morning, South African activist and academic, Dr. Fatima Hendricks. She has found herself at the center of global attention. I'm sure she would agree. After taking part in a lot of humanitarian missions linked to the plight of the people of Gaza, of Palestine, which one of them, ended in detention by Israeli authorities. But beyond the headlines, she's also an occupational therapist. She's a scholar and a decolonial thinker. That's my favorite part. Whose work spans health, justice, education, and social transformation. And this morning, we're going to be unpacking her journey from academia to activism, from healing individuals to engaging in global political solidarity, and what drives her commitment to human rights work on some of the world's most contested issues. Dr. Fatima Hendricks, welcome to News and Views.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be with you, Selelo, and all of the listeners. This is really a fantastic opportunity to engage, especially at this time where just so much is happening.
Yeah.
And it's happening so rapidly that we really have to make voice in very clear ways. So thank you for the opportunity.
No, the pleasure is all ours, and I can tell you for free, you are very loved in the Solar Media offices. Wherever Dr. Fatima is in Johannesburg, we make it a point that we come and greet you and see you. So this is a very, very wonderful opportunity to be chatting to you. That's why I wanted to kickstart the conversation, by maybe talking to you as a human being,
right?
A bit away from the activism work. I'm sure a lot of our listeners and our followers want to know, who is Fatima Hendricks in your own words?
Wow, that's a question I didn't see coming. But, okay, so a lot of us have grown up in apartheid, and we see that the post-94 realities are so entrenched in our everyday lives. And so growing up in apartheid, being involved in student movements is something that has carried with me throughout my life, and mostly driven and informed by a faith-based approach, where we grew up in a household of understanding the principles of human dignity and social justice. And that's really been very close to my heart. So I think that's framed who I am to a large extent, and also the choices I've made in, the work that I do. So people often wonder, what occupational therapy is all about. And it's really looking at the systems that really mold the abilities and the what people can do, what people are able to do through the environmental systems that operate around them, but also the things that happen to individuals because of these environmental systems, like disability, like psychological pressure, mental health illness, etc. So I've really been working in the space. I was an assistant professor out at Chicago State University, and I worked in the south side of Chicago. So if you know the south side, it's really the heart of segregation, and it really has been coming back from Chicago back to South Africa has really reinforced those connections of how webs of oppression, infrastructures of violence are not just localized, but they're really international.
And I'm seeing a link here, and I think it probably is going to answer my second question. Occupational therapy, academia, how did that path ultimately evolve into activism?
Yeah, I think, the relationship between scholar activism and being a scholar. I mean, some people that see a scholarship as being very separate to the lived realities, but scholarship is informed by the lived realities of what is on the ground, of people's experiences of life, and that is how we theorize. So scholar activism has been an integral part of my life from and I think it talks this decolonial approach of how knowledge is produced, who owns that knowledge, and how knowledge is used to make lives better. So I don't see them as separate. That there's a scholarship journey and there's an activist journey. They really are embedded for me in a lived reality of trying to make a difference in people's lives.
But I think we can both agree that the scale, of your activism really took off in the last couple of years. Was there a turning point, a moment for you that you can reflect back on and say, you know what, I always knew what I felt and how I understood the world, but this, I can't keep quiet anymore?
There's two major things happened. So I actually was working in Saudi Arabia, and then I became paralyzed. I was actually on life support 30 days, ICU 40 days. I had to learn to walk again, talk again, 18 months of rehab. Then I got cancer, and then I had a year of chemo. So these like real shifts, like something that fundamentally of purpose. Why are you here? What are you doing? And with the time that you have left, what are you going to do? So I think each one of us are really confronted with that. And when we faced head on with these decisions, I think a lot of us, go into the default of, I'm here for a reason and I need to step up.
I'm being told we have to go for a quick break in my ear, but when we come back, I want to touch on, I think, a moment that a lot of South Africans, the world, essentially got introduced to Dr. Fatima Hendricks, which is the Global Summit Flotilla and that journey there. I want us to go, a bit into detail into it, because I think it was very, very interesting, and seeing you speak on it and how vocal you are. I think it was a very inspiring moment, but I think we'll touch on it after the break. It's really important.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al Bayt Lodge, your true home away from home. Al Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists, with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities. Conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities, your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home love. 583-6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
Africa. Give the gift of clean water with Africa Muslims Agency. With every water well or borehole you donate, your drop becomes a river, reconnecting communities to nourishment, education, dignity and empowerment. Sponsor a water well for 17,000 Rand in Africa, or a borehole for 65,000 Rand in Afghanistan or Africa. Quench the thirst. Reconnect the soul with Africa Muslims Agency.
At Dynasty Islamic, we believe your financial future should grow with purpose and in line with your values. We specialize in Sharia-compliant financial solutions designed to protect, grow, and preserve your wealth. Whether it's investment planning, risk cover, or structuring your legacy, our approach is rooted in transparency, integrity, and ethical principles. Too often, people invest without knowing if their money aligns with their beliefs. At Dynasty Islamic, we change that, offering you clarity, confidence, and peace of mind. Let us help you build a future that's not only financially secure, but spiritually aligned. Dynasty Islamic, where your wealth meets your values. Get in touch with us at info@dynastyislamicfas.co.za, visit www.dynastyislamic.com, or find us on Facebook and Instagram.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views, 9 minutes before top of the hour. And I'm still in conversation with one of my favorite people. I'm sure she's yours too if you follow Salam Media, Dr. Fatima Hendricks. Before we went into that short break, I wanted to talk about the Global Summit Flotilla, because I think it's a very monumental, point in your activism. And we spoke about this while you were on the boats making your way to Gaza, trying to break the siege. The moment when you decided that, you're going to make this journey, what informed it? And if you can just recall your experiences of that journey before being intercepted.
Mm. I think we've all seen and felt the pain of Palestine for decades now. I mean, it's really embedded in our everyday lives of seeing such heartache and pain perpetuated by a violent oppressor,
Yeah.
and experiencing some of that in South Africa, and that kind of entanglement with Palestinians that is so personal and so intimate is something that informed my decision. And I also believe that it's a calling. It's where, things align, and that you are called, and really how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitates these movements towards good, and opens up the path for you. And so for me, a very important part of this has been dua, a prayer to, and asking Allah to use me in the best way. I mean, coming from my personal experiences and into this journey has been, please, Ya Allah, use me in the best way that is of most benefit. And so I ended up, on this, flotilla journey through the facilitation of really beautiful individuals who have been activists for decades, who've really been part of the PSOs for generations, have really been at the bedrock of the Palestinian struggle. And it's those people that I lean on, that I learned from, that I mentor, I'm mentored by. So when we talk about anything that we do, we never talk about the individual and center the individual. It's really the collective here, and that's really what has driven my my entry into the Global Samud Flotilla movement. What's been really significant in the movement is that it has been generational. It's really come from somewhere. I mean, from early 2000s into where we are right now, and it's been exposing about the realities and the brutality of the occupiers. I mean, being face to face with an Israeli, apartheid Israeli, someone from the occupation forces with a gun to your head, having them like strips, the violence that we talk about and that are coming out now with the flotilla activists is something that we always know, have known that it has existed. But we are now personal testifiers to this reality. And that's why these personal testimonies that the flotilla activists are going to submit and have submitted to the ICC is so important, because when people tell personal stories across the globe in the most uncanny people, preschool teachers and the most, because what has happened is that there's been smear campaigns, there's been criminalization of humanitarian efforts. So anybody that is doing anything for Palestine or any other humanitarian mission is criminalized. They are called terrorists. We have the Hasbara engine that starts. We have the blocking of borders. What used to be a normal flow of travel then becomes blocked. I mean, I've just come off the land convoy, right? We know what happened. I mean, we were a land convoy traveling across from Mauritania into Algeria, Tunisia, to Libya, meant to go into Egypt, to the Rafah crossing. We had negotiations underway. We were blocked. We were blocked in at every step of the way. I remember being at a checkpoint for 5.5 hours. We were people on a bus, on many buses. I mean, we came with ambulances and mobile homes and all of these things. And that we had engineers, eco-builders, educators, and all of these people on this land convoy. Of what threat is it to travel by land, to physically take these resources to the Palestinian people? And yet we criminalize. So we criminalized by every effort that we have in support of the Palestinian liberation struggle, as well as humanitarian assistance. And we need to be clear, and I want to be categorically really, really explicit. This is not a humanitarian story. This is a story of occupation. It's a violent occupation. And I mean, the default that we see is sugar-coated in humanitarian. And it's also sugar-coated in this notion of humanitarian aid. It's not aid. These are essentials for the survival of the Palestinian people who've been under siege.
Basic human rights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's sugar-coated as aid and all of these things, or described in this way, which also is colonial terminology in and of itself. So I think there are layers here. We're talking about a violent occupation. We're talking about imperialism with the active enablement by the United States. And we often, don't talk about that piece. Even if we talk about it, we talk about it in very shallow terms. But I think we really need to talk about U.S. involvement in its tentacles across the globe, in destabilizing countries, in unsettling seats of power, in regime change or not regime, government change, enforcing government change. And I'm really concerned for what is happening here in South Africa.
Yeah. And I think it's very, very concerning. We'll touch on that a bit later on, because it's very important.
Right.
I wanna touch on, I think, an experience that you had, and you also touched on it briefly. I'm not sure if you call it an opportunity, but an experience of being face to face, eye to eye with an IOF official, soldier, terrorist, whatever you want to call them. What does that experience do to you, knowing that the person standing in front of you is responsible for a genocide? They've killed innocent men, women, and children. What's that experience like?
Well, one of them is really an absolute horror of the engine of dehumanization. Like, what happens to people that they hate so much? And that hatred is then used to fuel other dehumanization of other people. So at what point do things become so twisted in an individual's mind that they become so hateful to inflict that kind of pain and suffering on another human being? And for me, these are like fundamental questions of good and evil in the world. And I mean, when we talk about forces, these are the forces that we really are talking about. Where people talk about neutrality, you need to be neutral. No, we are not neutral in the face of evil. We are not neutral where in the face of such injustice. We can never be. And silence in the face of such injustice is something that is highly I really try when I engage with people who are in the community and things like that, to really explain that when we are silent, we're actually enabling.
Yeah.
We're part of that complicity. We're part of the permissions that we are giving for these violences to continue. And so there is a visceral response that we have. Everything in you responds to the aggressor in front of you. But then you have to just then recalibrate and keep centered that I do not and will not allow myself to become you. I will use my light and the light of my faith and the goodness within me to resist you in my way. And the way that we've done it on the flotilla has been non-violent direct action. And yet they come after us. The brutality of the forces that come after non-violent direct action, people engage in non-violent direct action, is absolutely telling about the brutality of the occupation and all of the allies that feed into this occupation, be they in Europe or be they in North America.
Any moment from that experience that will stay with you for the rest of your life? Do you even still think about it? It was last year. Have you sought help, from maybe those memories has it affected you in any way?
Well, these things are brutal. So they affect us for me, they've affected me in my amplification of making voice, in providing me with the energy to seek more spiritual energy to do this work. And for me, spiritual centering and intentionality and going back to the nia of why I'm doing what I'm doing is something I'm working very, very hard on every single day. And to keep recentering that this is the way of radical love, this is the way of dignity, this is the way of the prophetic example, this is the values of the Quran. These are values that we are trying to embody. We make lots of mistakes along the way. It's a learning journey, but trying to each time keep on track is something that I think has been, real. I mean, I remember we were in the cell and reading the Quranic ayah, reading the messages of the Palestinians, seeing bullets in the ceilings, seeing our fellow women comrades dragged on the floor, with dogs coming into our cell and, rifles and all of these violences. I mean, the flotilla members that went on this year have even more brutal stories. My brother was on the flotilla. He was sexually assaulted together with several other members. So I think that the brutality is one thing, but the brutality of how the larger engines of the empire are exerting its forces within local countries, and on civilians is something that is a phenomenon that we see now. I mean, we see it in the fascist kind of movements. We see it in the right-wing governments. We see it in how there is clamping down on any, standing up for human rights, standing up for equity and justice around the world. So it's part of a greater, humanitarian struggle for liberty, for equity, for equality around the world.
You mentioned something that's very important, the clamping down. I think is something that we're seeing as being the reality right now. It doesn't matter whether you try and speak out on social media or you are as vocal as you. The Hasbara will find a way to shut you up. They've done it with so many activists. What do people do now when even making a living could be at risk because you're speaking out? People lose their livelihoods. Some are, stalked and they're just made scared to speak out. They're not as vocal as you and they want to, but they just can't.
And this is really a reality that we face. And then that's why I started out with talking about collective care, that we are a movement and we are millions and hundreds of millions around the globe. And if we see ourselves continuously as minoritized and minorities, we will not have the gains and have the power that we need to. And so it is a matter of perspective. And we go back to that decolonial thinking about my wholeness and my goodness and my right. When I say my, it's not me. I mean, we as people of the entire world of humanity galvanizing for good. And so it is our responsibility when people are being doxxed, when people are losing their livelihoods, for us in the communities to really step up and be those buffers instead of ostracizing those that are already speaking up, instead of making activism a very lonely place for those that are, speaking up in uncomfortable places, making the room uncomfortable, because these are the moments where it's really important to speak truth to power. And so our silence when someone is trying to make voice, even in a room, speaking truth to power, and our own silence in that space without supporting the person who's exerting cognitive energy, emotional energy, every cell in their body burning to tell truth to that power, and our silence in that space is something that we really have to reflect upon and correct.
There's something I, never spoken about on air, and I think you probably faced a similar type of thing. When we did our first annual Sword Walk for Gaza, I was one of the organizers. That was mainstream media, so it got a lot of traction. After that, I got a lot of emails, calls, threats, people telling me essentially, we know where you're going to be. We see you, shut up, you black boy, all kinds of derogatory, racist, terms you can think of. And I think I was fortunate to have the team and institution that I'm working for really protect me and shield me from that. Have you gone through a similar thing where you were now targeted because of how vocal you are? Any experiences you can share from that?
Absolutely. I think every activist goes through these moments of either microaggression or actual violence against us. And it's something that we have to think about in terms of our personal safety and security. But I do want to talk about, just to move, yes, of course I have, but I do want to talk about what is happening with our relationship with our Palestinian sisters and brothers in the diaspora.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if we think that we're being doxxed and we have, a lot of these kinds of pressures, our Palestinian sisters and brothers are even under more pressure. And those that are from Gulf states that are now seeking refuge, those that have come from the United States, returning to their home countries forcibly because of ICE, etc. I mean, there is danger amongst and danger and unsafety being experienced. So the call here is, let us shorten the gap and the relational distance with our Palestinian sisters and brothers, our Sudanese, our Congolese sisters and brothers in our communities. We have much work to do beyond seeing our sisters and brothers as refugees, but really as sisters and brothers in ways that are very, very intimate and talk to the belonging of an us and a collective of being, of living in South Africa. And, we are up against on the grassroots, this Operation Dudulel. Yes. Oh my gosh. I have been tongue-tied this morning. And on the other hand, we have the political parties, some of them really driving the political narratives of, anti-immigrant sentiments. And as responsible people in this country, as people of conscience, we really need to make voice on the implementation of the law, but how these laws are implemented, and also, challenging whether some of these laws are actually, upholding our principles of human rights and dignity for all.
I think you touched on what was going to be my closing question, the reality of the country right now, where I think it's obvious for everyone to see that there's a concerted effort to destabilize the country, whether it's by these, organizations like Dudula and trying to force insurgency into the country, internationally, the attacks from the United States of America. How do ordinary South Africans that are peace-loving, that are active and vocal because of the history that we have, respond to this new reality that something is brewing in South Africa? You can almost feel it, that we feel like we're at a cusp of something radical that could change what we know and understand South Africa to be. What do we do now?
It's a fantastic question, because this has been some time coming. If we look at just the and also, so there's two parts to this question for me. One is that we are responsible for some of this because our government and as people have hollowed out the institutions that are meant to be robust in a successful state. Yes. So that's the one thing. Yeah. And on the second thing is that our positions and our stands invite this kind of violence onto us also. So our resistance as a people is to critically question and interrogate the information that we're being fed with, to fill the ranks of the liberation movements again, that we have to a large extent abandoned in active support and participation and left it to the, what we now call predatory elites, And so it is the call to each one of us to really step up in our spaces. And this means that we have to find our personal power. Whatever it is that's holding us back from being fully present and fully participating, is something that we have to find. And our hunger for bread, and our hunger to make a living, and our hunger to provide for our families will come from this power. We see the same poverty and the worse conditions in our fellow African countries. Yet, we find people that are entrepreneurial, that's selling and that are hustling, that are doing the things that we need to do. And we have it in us. We see pockets of this around South Africa. So it is harnessing, it is encouraging the goodness and the strength and the personal power in each one of us as individuals and as collectives to do this. If I may, could I please really call out that we mobilize for the release of the Cert 10. These are our comrades. These are humanitarians that went on the land convoy. I was horrified to hear yesterday that these 10 that were kidnapped, they're abducted volunteers from the land convoy, from Italy, from Spain, from Uruguay, US, etc. They were abducted. They were on the land convoy. They've been in prison for over 2 weeks. I was horrified to hear that they are actually going to possibly be in for another 30 days.
Wow.
30 more days. Being accused of being arbitrarily detained. And it talks again to this criminalization of humanitarian action. So we are having today a posting on social media. If you see a post about the Cert 10, repost it, make voice. We have been all over the world, mobilizing outside the Italian embassy, etc., having hunger strikes and doing the things that we can do to rally Haftar's and his militia to release the Cert 10 from eastern Libya. These are humanitarians that went in good faith. They knew that these were humanitarians. This was our third attempt to East Libyan border, right? So the first time we delivered a letter to Red Crescent. They were meant to have a meeting. It didn't materialize. Second time, we were turned back by the military. The third time, we went with our entire convoy. So it's all the ambulances and all the buses and all the mobile homes to the border. And the 2 ambulances up front were the people that were abducted. And this is unacceptable. Unacceptable. They're being held in a black site right now.
Sure. Very, very scary. I want to wrap up this conversation by asking you one last question. I know my producer is really upset at me. But when it's all said and done, what do you want to be remembered as?
Wow, that's a really, really powerful question. As someone who lived in love, in the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the prophetic example of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I want to wish everyone a blessed new year, Muharram Mubarak, and to remember the struggle of Imam Hussein and Sayyidah Zainab, especially as a woman standing in these spaces, how she held the truth and carried that torch. And so always going back to our tradition, our rich tradition, our tradition is shallow, deep, rich, and leaning in on that tradition and saying that this is the reason that I do the things that I do. So we stand with all our sisters and brothers around the world who are suffering, but also remembering that the suffering is not new. That this pain and this suffering has been intergeneration, and the only shifts that have come towards goodness and light have come from people, other people, in spreading the light that they have gleamed from the Quran and the prophetic Sunnah. So we return to that. And also, I was so moved to see the picture of Dr. Hussam Abu Safia. It was heartbreaking. A pediatrician, at Kamal Adwan Hospital, to see him in this vulnerable state, and over 9,600 Palestinians, and to see the images coming out of Congo, to see the images coming out of Sudan, and to be driving here in South Africa and seeing the levels of poverty. So together there is great power in our collective recognition of each other in radical love. And I pray that I'm able to learn how to be and walk more in this radical love. I also ask, for forgiveness for the many mistakes and the learning, the errors that we make along the way. As human beings, you take us warts and all. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure being here.
No, pleasure's been all ours. And as the young people say, you're a real one, because I've asked you so many questions about yourself, but you've never really answered for yourself. It was always about the oppressed people, the people that are suffering way more than you and I could ever imagine. So that's a standout for me. One of my favorite conversations. And we're going to be wrapping it up. Thank you so much for staying with us for the past 2 hours and 16 minutes. Sorry, Puti. We'll be back with you again tomorrow for the Friday edition of News and Views. Assalamu alaikum. Shab shab.
Soweto, it's time to stand together for justice, peace, and solidarity. Join us for the annual Soweto Walk for Gaza, taking place on Saturday, the 20th of June at 7:30 a.m. The walk will begin at the historic Regina Mundi Church and proceed to the monumentous Dlamini Mosque, bringing together people of all faiths, backgrounds, and communities in a powerful show of unity and support. Bring your family, friends, and fellow residents as we walk together for a common cause. Let your voice be heard and your presence counted. That's the annual Soweto Walk for Gaza, Saturday, the 20th of June at 7:30 in the morning, starting at Regina Mundi Church and ending at Dlamini Mosque. Together we walk, together we stand, together we show solidarity.